Okay, it's Monday. We're raring to go from the world headquarters of RT America and our nation's capital. Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. Let me first take you through a global wipe fest. Wipe is the TV term, by the way, for one video effectively pushing out the other video. Here we go. Wipe one. Haiti. 42 people have been killed protesting government corruption there. Let's go to wipe two. Hong Kong. More violent protests over the weekend seem to directly tie the demonstrators to the United States, so says Beijing. And wipe three, Iraq. Protesters are now trying to infiltrate the infamous green zone where they are being met with actual live gunfire. We're going to break down the rage in all three of those places for you, but we're going to begin with what could become the biggest problem that's facing America today. And it's barely being talked about, but it really is. All signs now point to a recession or worse being around the corner. And how do we know that? The Fed's actions, that's how. It is literally cutting interest rates, what, 3 times now? Even hinting of another round of QE, quantitative easing. You don't do stuff like that unless you're really worried, right? Economists agree that they're worried. And if they're not worried, they should be worried, right? So what will likely trigger the recession? Experts say it's going to be this trade war with China. No doubt about it. But wait, didn't China bail us out the last time there was a recession? Huh? The last time there was, what was it? The meltdown it was called, right? Last time there was a recession in the United States. Who bailed us out? Most people don't know. China. Yeah, the answer is yes, China. China rescued the United States economy during the meltdown by buying our treasury bonds, essentially buying our debt, right? So it wouldn't be there anymore and we can get more, which is what they did. Now, think about that. Think about what China did last time as you hear China expert Sourabh Gupta talk about the U.S. verbally lambasting China last week.
Because once the recession comes, you will have to go back to China to ask them to have fiscal stimulus for the global economy. And China did it in a big way in 2007, 2008, but also learned some negative lessons, and it's not going to do it a second time.
Did you hear what he just said there? He said, quote, he's not going to do it a second time. He even did this little thing with his finger, right? He's not going to do it a second time. China's not going to do it a second time around. If that's true, then what, right? Think about it. If we can't bring down interest rates because they're already so darn low, if we can't borrow more because the debt and the deficit are already kind of maxed out, and if China comes in and says, look, you guys started a trade war with us, therefore we're not going to bail you out this time around, then what? We're getting ahead of this story because sometimes you got to look ahead, especially when the consequences can be so dire. This is the news with Rick Sanchez, where we believe it's time to do news again. Our list of the questions we think you're going to be asking tomorrow. Why did China buy our debt, and why might they not ever want to do it again? Will a Boeing exec flying on his own plane convince you, okay, it must be safe? And does President Trump have the right to, quote, keep Syria's oil, or take? Same thing, really, right? But we kick off our A block today with something that we should all be concerned about, a coming recession, which seems more and more apparent with each passing day. Economists say the only question is when and how severe is it going to be. Now, let's take the second part of this first, how severe, right? The answer to that question may have to do with the tools that are at our disposal to get us out of said recession. One of those tools is China. Following the economic meltdown of 2008, China paid trillions and trillions of dollars to buy U.S. securities, essentially keeping the United States economy during a tough time afloat. Sourabh Gupta is a China expert. He's with the Institute for China-American Studies. Fascinating conversation we had last week. You left me thinking about this whole China situation having to do with the fact that they may have bailed us out in 2008. And you're saying, or at least postulating, if we go back to that well, it may be dry. Define.
It will be dry this time around. You know, in 2009, China was part of a huge fiscal stimulus, which of course benefited its own economy.
$3.5 trillion, I think?
It was a large, exactly, it was a large sum because the US put out $700 billion. Remember the Obama stimulus, and that was kind of peanuts in comparison.
Yeah.
But the Chinese also realized that that huge stimulus they put out also kind of unbalanced their own economy and exacerbated their already old growth model, which was based on excess investment. They needed and need to transition to a more consumption and high productivity-based growth model. And that's why over the last couple of years, particularly the last 2 years, even as the Chinese economy is doing poorly, they have not provided stimulus to their own economy.
So what you're saying is that in an effort to help us, they kind of hurt themselves somewhat.
To some extent,
they may not want to do it again.
They will not want to do it again because they're not even doing it to themselves at a time when they could do with some help on the stimulus front.
Everybody needs a rich uncle, right? And everybody's always thought we were the world's rich uncle. And our president makes it sound like we really are. We're not. China is. They're our rich uncle, aren't they?
Yes, China is America's rich uncle, and China is happy to play the role of America's rich uncle to have an intertwined economy which provides a ballast to their larger bilateral relationships.
So let's go through the equation of what happens if there is a global recession vis-a-vis a very severe recession in the United States. Some people saying it's going to be worse than a recession. So we have already lowered interest rates, right? We have pretty much gone into our deficits and our debt by printing money. We did that last time. And if we've already used those two tools, and now we turn to China, and China says, sorry, we got nothing for you, what's left, Sourabh?
There isn't much left. You know, China is one of the few countries which still has fiscal space to put out this sort of stimulus to reflate the global economy if things come to that, to such a pass. But the Chinese realize, I mean, this is not something automatically they will do, and especially if they're at the end of a lot of cursing from the American side, what is in their interest to do so?
Yeah, they have been abused of late. I think Mr. Pompeo's comments last week seemed somewhat bombastic. You and I have had conversations about this. But so let's, again, go through this equation, right? The United States is in a recession. They try and get themselves out by printing more money, but there's not a lot of room there because we've already done that so many times. We try to bring down interest rates, but there's not a lot of room there because we've already brought it down to almost zero. We're going to turn to China, but China doesn't have money. My gosh, this could be a pretty serious situation. I guess what I need to know from you is, what would be the situation for the average person watching this newscast in America? How would it hit Main Street?
Let me frame it this way. Each of the previous recessions has had a very significant impact on U.S. domestic manufacturing. We are going to see job losses out there which will not come back to U.S. manufacturing. So in important political pockets, we are going to see severe job losses and movement of production capacity out of this country. That is going to throw up a lot of foul political rhetoric, which will further exacerbate the political narrative out here and give further spur to protectionist forces, populist forces, and all sorts of, I would say.
That's what gets people like Trump elected.
That's what gets people like Trump elected. And you're going to see next time perhaps a Trump, just a more slick-talking person like Trump, but perhaps more dangerous than that. So we should be ready that that sort of a situation could happen at some point down the line.
I get it, yeah. So the situation is really bad in the country. People are desperate, and they turn to anybody who comes along with answers, even if it's fake or false answers. Here's the question. If there is this recession, who is better equipped to be able to get out of it sooner? I imagine the answer, again, is going to be China?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be China because China is already going through a downturn at this point of time as we speak, and it's not reflating and stimulating. It's trying to get beyond its downturn by making productivity-based reforms. And so when that next global recession comes, or when it really strikes America, China will have already passed its cyclical downturn and will be making that investments for the future in strategic industries, 5G, advanced manufacturing, etc., where the U.S. would want to make those investments but will not have the money to.
So China's more poised or better poised to be able to handle the onslaught of a global recession.
Sure,
perhaps
absolutely.
more than just about any other country,
Yes,
and that's what
absolutely.
they're working toward.
Yes, that's
a fascinating conversation to look ahead, but I think, you know what? We should be doing this. If not, it's going to catch us by the short hairs.
At this point of time, it's essential to be asking these questions.
Sourabh Gupta, thank you as usual. Good stuff.
You're welcome.